Better late than never, right? Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, better late than never. All right. I apologize to everyone who was waiting on me to get the show started tonight, evening. Yeah, we got a good show planned. I do have a special guest because Nick is in Disneyland. Yeah, I'd rather be here too. We've had him on several times, guys, and tonight with the topic we're going to be talking about, which is the positive and negative effects that the MCU has had and is still having on the comic book market. I invited my good buddy Dan De La Torre to come on and talk about that with us. What's going on, man?
Doing fine, my man. Loving life and just waiting to see what the next big thing is going to be in the comic world.
Right, right. I think that's what we're all sitting here waiting on right now. We haven't had something like that in a while. Seems like there seemed to be for about a I don't know 2 year period there consistently there would be something that was taking the main stage as far as what was hot. You had Turtles for a while, you had Star Wars, Godzilla got there for a minute. So it doesn't seem like we've had that pattern continue on over the last year or so for sure.
Well, maybe in the MCU's defense, because I know we'll be talking a lot about them. It takes what, a year and a half, 2 years to make a movie. So these Phase 4 basically originated from the pandemic, and so they limped along like everybody else. And I think it's fair to give that as an excuse because Phase 4 was not the most lackluster, or it was the most lackluster of the phases to this point. Phase 5 looks a lot better,
Yeah.
but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm definitely looking at Phase 5 as being something to look forward to, and definitely showing some hope there for sure. We got a few people hanging out. What's going on, Empire? Steve, Captain Comics, what's up, buddy? Vinny Whitlock, what's going on, dude? And then we got the bot in there hanging out. So I think Nick said that was us. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But so yeah, I've seen. Well, I guess let's start back at the beginning. I mean, of course, we all know that speculation in comics, one way or another, has been there for quite a long time. But I think in the early stages of the MCU, when you first started getting all these new movies coming out, it was something, of course, that we had never seen before at that level, anyway. As far as the production, the design of the movies, the costume designs, A-list, absolute A-list actors being casted in the roles for these characters. I think that and if you guys disagree, let me know. I think that you started to get an organic increase in prices for some of these books for first appearances of characters like Captain America and Iron Man and Thor from the influx of people that you got that were new to collecting comics from those movies. And to me, it seems like that would have been something that was an organic type thing where when we were and I wasn't into comics at the time. So again, if anybody has any knowledge on it, I mean, I wouldn't think that when we heard an Iron Man movie was coming out that everybody was going nuts and all Iron Man titled comics, anything with his face on it, was just going through the roof. Leading up to that, people speculating on that and hoping to be able to flip them for a profit later on, to the point that we are now. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I don't know if were you really heavy into comics at that time, or what did you see?
Well, you have to go even further back when Marvel really got going. Before the traditional start of the MCU was 2000, 2002 with Spider-Man and X-Men. Those are both excellent movies, by the way. believe they're both made by Paramount. Yeah, they were. I love Tobey Maguire. Say what you will about him, but he was the Spider-Man that I remember, kind of a nerdy kid, and I think he was an excellent choice for that. And then the X-Men was fantastic. That's the X-Men that I remember, an all-star cast. but it didn't seem to have much influence on comics. And even when Iron Man 1 showed up in 2008, I went to go see it because I'm a Marvel guy. I thought it was an instant classic. I was
Yeah.
in love with it from start to finish. But I didn't make the equation that would spike comics. And it didn't 100%. Maybe it was the beginning spark, because there's one comic in particular, actually two. Iron Man 170, first James Rhodes' Iron Man, because Rhodes had showed up in that, and then of course in the second movie, and then Iron Man 200, Iron Man versus Ironmonger, should have really spiked. I don't think it really did anything. It should be worth something to this day. It's not quite a dollar bin book, but it's nowhere near where it should be.
Right.
But I'm not exactly certain when the transition from the excitement of the MCU and the connection to comic books started, but it certainly did, and we've been speculating ever since. Now, probably because of as the aforementioned Phase 4, which wasn't all that lackluster, and also they're going in their own direction. They're not going on using the template of Marvel Silver, Bronze, and Copper Age. They're sort of doing their own thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to go back to a comic if they're not using that as a template regarding the original storyline. How do you speculate? And so
Yeah.
they keep getting further and further away from what made Marvel famous, what made Marvel the most powerful comic company in the world, beating out DC. We'll see if they kind of reset themselves in this next phase, but I hope they do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree 100%. I agree 100% on that. Um, yeah, I like I said, Nick and I, we haven't been into comic books. I think we got into it around 2019, so we're still very, very young in this. But I've always been curious as to when it turned into this game of, what book do I need to have before it comes out, and when it comes out, automatically the price increases. And I've always questioned that part too. I did a video about it probably a year or two ago, and I saw Sticky Goose did a video about it last week, and it brought up the same exact points I was making. But I did a video, and I was just like, what is it? What is the mindset outside of the idea that it's just become an absolute pattern? But what is it that initially causes the whole idea that just because a character is going to be in a movie or a TV show, automatically without reason, that right there is enough, like that increases the price. Now that book is worth more immediately.
Well, that's a multifaceted question. I mean, let's look at the hot ticket right now. The what is it? The guy who did 8 Mile on with Spider-Man. I forget
Oh yeah.
what's his name?
The M&M.
Eminem cover. It's hot. Everyone's paying $125 a book for a brand new comic, because why? The popularity of that particular artist.
Right.
That's fine. That's something that would generate, but it all depends on the popularity of the actor or actress and the character, how they play that character, how poorly they play that character, how the storyline comes across. And this is the big reason why DC Comics the books haven't really spiked, because the movies haven't been all that great, even though they actually have some pretty good, a pretty good set of actors and actresses in their arsenal. We'll talk about that hopefully before the show ends. I do want to weigh on their firing of the current Superman. I think that was a terrible mistake. But it's and then also the economy too. We have to talk about that, because who knows how bad it's going to be going into this next year. Everyone says it's going to be pretty bad. I think we're not being told and I don't want to get political because it's not a political show, but I think we're not being told the truth about how bad the economy is going to be. I say we're in a hard recession. That's going to affect us next year. And all collectibles suffer, whether it's antiques or antique cars or comics or whatever. Those, because they don't sustain your life, those sort of go to the wayside, and more tangible items like your home, your vehicle that you need, and food, clothing, that sort of thing, that all goes up because those are mandatory. These are luxury items. So that's going to come into play next year too. So I will continue to say, certainly for the better part of 2023, if you buy long term. Don't I mean, you can flip a comic, but that market has shrunk. And so your best
Oh
bet,
yeah.
like any stock, is you buy it and you let it, or any bond, you buy it, let it mature for 4 to 5 years, and then maybe if you want to turn it around, that's the time to get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I'm at the point now where I'm dying to buy a lot of stuff
Yeah.
because the prices are dropping.
Yeah.
But at the same time, uh, I'm hesitant, not because it's not that I'm hesitant that I'm gonna lose money, uh, or lose that the book is gonna lose value if I purchase it too early. I'm more hesitant because I'm like, man, if I buy this book for 1,500 now, or should I wait and see if I can get it for like 900 in a couple of months? Like that's where I'm at. Like I want the book regardless. Like whatever happens to the value in it happens, but I'm more hesitant because I'm like, well, can I save some more money later to put with another book, get two of them or
Right.
get two of the books that I really want to get for the price of one of them. So and that's what I've been telling my wife, I'm like there's several books where I'm like, man, I have a bad track record of waiting too long. So
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah.
watching a certain book and I'm like, okay, the price is going down, and I'll keep it in the back of my mind. But meanwhile, I'm grabbing a couple other things here and there. Next thing I know, I turn around and the book's just skyrockets for no reason out of nowhere, and I'm like, damn, I should have grabbed it when I was thinking about it. And
Right. Right.
that's more my worry now is I want to grab as much as I can while the getting's good, before it turns back around. Because
As you,
I think it's inevitable that it will eventually, but who knows how long it's going to be. But I agree
we
with
don't
you. I think
know.
it's definitely going to be at least a
I,
year or two.
I don't know about that because again, looking at the big picture here with our economy, we're $31 trillion in debt. That has to be paid off at some point. They stop talking about that. There's going to be a long term collapse at some point if that isn't corrected. But
Yeah.
regarding as you're saying all this, though, you remind me of the movie, the Eddie Murphy movie, Trading Places, as him and what's his name go to the stock market. They're at the Dow Jones and they're waiting for the last second and they're waiting to the very, very bottom. And then what's his name tells Murphy, buy, buy. And then they start buying everything. They make a fortune.
Yeah.
We don't know when the bottom's going to hit. Again, I'm going to say probably summer of 2023, but we'll see how things go because everything's very volatile. But it
Right.
also depends on what you're looking for. Are you buying as a collector? See, I don't
Oh yeah.
buy thinking,
Yeah.
hey, this is going to make me money
Nope.
in who knows how many years. I buy because I love comics. So that's one
That's where
aspect.
I'm at.
Yeah. Then at that point, it's just use your own means. Obviously, you've got to pay for your home and your family and all the rest of it. That comes first, and whatever else is afterward. Then you could put whatever you have afterwards towards that. And if times are tough, don't buy anything. Don't worry about it, and
Yeah.
don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed to say, hey, it's not smart to buy when you don't have any money. Like I've had to
Right.
do that the last 9 years. There's been months and months at a time when things weren't so good. I didn't buy anything. Then I could go ahead and read. I still got to. I know you and I both have a ton of reading behind us, so
Oh
that's
yeah.
a great time to do that. But you can,
Absolutely.
but on these times right now, there's all sorts of minor keys you can get.
Yeah.
Those are $10, $15 books that were $30, $35 at one point. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't mind getting some of those. So you just really really slow down your buying and do whatever makes you happy. But I think there's been too much focus on the value and the market regarding how much these things are worth as if they're not necessarily stocks, I guess, but they're tradable commodities. I
Right.
think there's an over focus on the money, on their value and how much you can flip them for and so forth. But I I think the best advice is buy it and don't worry about it. Just put it aside. Like if you're buying stock and you're watching the stock market every day, I, I wouldn't do that. That's because you'll go gray like me, and it'll age you before you know it. Just stop worrying about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, let's see. Tall Paul says the money you spend on your Avengers 4 will buy higher grade now. Actually, it wouldn't because I got a smoking ass deal on that book.
Oh,
I still paid less for that book than what
oh
you can
yeah.
buy it for right now. Right now, I got that good of a deal on it because I got pre blow up prices on that book because I made the deal on it months before I picked it up. I just had to wait until I got out there to my brother's house to go to Haven to pick it up. But That one, there are books that I have that
Yeah.
I could get a higher grade if I'd have waited, but most of the stuff that I buy, I'm not gonna buy it if I'm not getting a smoking ass deal. So
See, this is my prized possession. One of my prized possessions right here is
yeah,
Avengers
that's
4,
awesome.
signed by Stan Lee, CBCS. It's got some problems, the cover's trimmed and all that, but I don't care. I paid only $650 for this because I just happened to, I was there at the right time. I don't
Nice.
think this would last more than 5 minutes on eBay if you post it for that price because they had one. My comic
Oh yeah,
shop had one that was 4 times as much, also Stan Lee signed. But the thing is, that goes back to all collecting. You have to be patient and
yeah,
diligent. And
yep,
in 2020, 2019, 2020, that was the biggest buying spurt I'd ever had in my life. I was on eBay maybe 5, 6 times a day looking through everything. And that I saw that, I thought I almost didn't buy it because I thought it was no one's selling it for that.
yeah,
650
yeah. I remember you
bucks.
saying like
Yeah,
you were worried that it wasn't even gonna. You were worried even after you paid for it that you're gonna get scammed.
absolutely. But again, you've got to be patient, diligent, and you got to be a smart buyer, and don't be afraid to let things go.
Yeah,
I've fallen into that trap where, let's say a comic's really worth about $100, and you get wrapped up in a bidding war, and you pay $125 for it. Yeah, you paid way too much for it. You could have
yeah.
waited, and then a month later, you see the same book that's in better shape for less money. So
Hmm.
you got to be patient with these things.
Absolutely, absolutely. I waited probably a year to buy an Avengers 4. Once I had decided I really wanted that, and I ended up getting a 3.0 for like $750. And I think I just looked at GPA, and last sale on GPA is $1,200 in that grade for this month of December. So, I mean, Blue Label 3.0, and I mean, honestly, I could probably crack it out and bump the grade on it. It's just I just haven't really had the desire to do so. But I mean, I agree with that 100%. It, I get in the habit of uh, I get on a kick, and when I get on a kick, like right now, I'm on a Fantastic Four kick. So I've got certain
Right.
books that I want, but I'm constantly looking at them, and I have save searches on eBay, and I have on all the places I buy, and I keep an eye out for them. People send them to me on Instagram and stuff, and I'm constantly watching, and I'm just waiting for because I keep seeing them drop, and they're getting a little lower and a little lower, and I'm just kind of just sitting here waiting and biding my time until it's time to jump on them. And I think that patience definitely pays off in the long run. Not just here. I mean, with comics. I mean that's going to be with pretty much any and everything, but definitely with comic books for sure, because you never know when you're going to run across just some kind of crazy deal that you weren't expecting.
Well, with Avengers 4, I'm still am puzzled. That's one of the major keys. And
Yeah,
it's one of the most underrated and
absolutely,
undervalued major keys still.
absolutely.
And even when going back to the MCU, when they had Chris Evans as Captain America, in his heyday, he was around for quite a while. That book absolutely should have spiked because again, that's no one's going to get a Cap 1 unless you're Doc from the Hunt.
Yeah.
Um, but to get hold of an actual Avengers Ford from 1964, his first Silver Age appearance,
Hmm.
that should be double what it is now, and it's
I
not.
agree.
And
I agree.
hey, if you're in the market for an Avengers Ford, that's good news for you. But I
Yeah.
I don't know why it's still an underappreciated book.
I think a lot of the silver and bronze age books, especially the silver age books like that, um, I think what keeps a lot of these books down is because you have so many of these new modern books that got so high, and that's where people were spending their money, and so you just kept seeing these big, huge, significant increases on a lot of this modern stuff, which is now hitting the tank, and honestly, it's just getting back to what it probably should be, because a lot of that stuff was selling for way more than it probably should have been. But I think stuff like Avengers 4, um, maybe a casualty of that, where, same thing with Captain America 100. I mean, hell, you can get a Captain America 100, which is absolutely one of Kirby's best covers he's ever done. And that book right there I mean, you can pick that up super cheap, super cheap. I mean, you can find, I think you can get a 5.0 to a 6.0 for under $400 graded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that's another one. I mean, that's Captain America's first Marvel issue in title. And I mean, even Iron Man #1 didn't really catch any real increase until the past year or so. And I think a lot of that is just because so many people and so much of the spec market transitioned over to the modern stuff because of where the MCU was going, and Captain America's phasing out and Iron Man's phasing out and all of that. And then you saw a lot of that stuff kind of getting left by the wayside, which people like you and I, obviously that's where our minds and hearts are. But the modern stuff had been pushed to the forefront so much for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. I don't know. Maybe that. What do you think? Does that make any sense? That could have something to do with it. That people are spending so much, and the constant increase in prices on the modern stuff, pushing some of that to the back burner.
I think that's part of it. I think it's a big part of it. Another big part of it is a generational thing where,
Yeah.
in my day, the Avengers, the first, I don't know, 10, 11 issues of the Avengers, that was good old fashioned Stan Lee, Jack Kirby storyline, especially Avengers 4 is a classic story.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for someone like myself that knows and appreciates that quality of story.
Yeah.
This younger generation doesn't know the quality of the stories. This is why I love coming on your show. You and your brother very much impressed me, because you guys are what, 25, 30 years younger than I am. And here you are appreciating good quality storyline, starting with the Fantastic Four, and you've got the Avengers books to read. You've got all sorts of Stan Lee, Kirby, and Roy Thomas stories, and all these great stories from that era. So you've got a lot of fun reading ahead of you, but you appreciate it. You appreciate good quality entertainment, which is what this is. And it's kind of no different if you look at it, that I look at entertainment across the board as lackluster. I don't care for the new music that's out there. Hollywood is a joke for the most part. I don't care. The actors and actresses are not very good at what they do, and the stories are horrid. And so why bother to go to a theater and watch a show that I'm not interested in? So, but I stick with, it's not that I'm being, an older prude or anything, but it's like, I like good quality. Yeah. And so, here's an example with the MCU since Iron Man 1, they've shown the public at large what good quality is. And we've gravitated towards it, and they've made billions, which is great because you want to be popular and you want to make money. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But now that we've seen what good quality is regarding comic story art, now we see how bad DC is. And DC again had a template to sort of follow. If they follow the Marvel Kevin Feige storyline and their approach, they still haven't done it. And I was making predictions that maybe now's a good time to start getting DC keys because they're a lot cheaper than their Marvel counterparts.
Oh yeah.
But after the firing of Henry Cavill, I'm changing that. I'm saying don't touch DC, because if they're starting over again, do you mind if we get into that right now to the DC?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the thing that really bothered me was, one, I'm not just a fan of Henry Cavill, but I'm rooting for the DC universe. I wanted them to get started. And I finally saw a spark this past a couple months ago when the Black Adam movie shows up. That felt for the first time like, hey, it's a DC movie, and some of the DC characters are showing up, and they're taking a gradual approach. And I loved Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. He was perfect for the role. And at the very, very end, you see who's that woman who's sort of she's sort of the Nick Cage of the DC universe, and she's telling Adam, you gotta, you stay in your place.
I forget her name, but yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah, I can't think of her daggone name though.
And I like that character. She's kind of no nonsense.
Yeah, she was in Peacemaker a lot.
Right, and then Henry Cavill shows up at the end of Superman, so there's another gradual connection, and they were finally off on the right track here. And then this past week, they decided to fire Henry Cavill. My problem with that is this.
Amanda Waller, yes.
Amanda Waller. James Gunn and Michael Zaslav is the guy that are running DC right now. they both said that they want to focus DC around Superman, and that's totally fine. I agree with this. But why fire the best Superman they've had in many, many decades? Cavill has owned that role. I certainly accept him as Superman. I didn't accept the previous incarnations of it, the TV show or the movies. I didn't even really care for Christopher Reeve. And again, I'm a lot older than you guys. When Christopher Reeve was Superman, he wasn't a great Superman. I'm sorry, he was okay. I know that those movies made money, but you look at the quality of the actor. In fact, he was interviewed during the casting of that. He was last out of 50, I think, and he was the last guy because he looked like Superman. But his acting wasn't all that great. The stories weren't that great. But that when Henry Cavill shows up in, was it Man of Steel? It was his first movie. I instantly accepted him as Superman. I loved him. I thought it was a fantastic storyline. In fact, one of the things that really grabbed me was that there was how do you say this? The storyline hinged around a father's love to a son. Now,
Right.
in this case, Superman had two fathers, one from Krypton and one here on Earth. Both of those men did a fine job with that, but there isn't enough of that in Hollywood. It's too feminine. And I don't care about feminist movies and all that. That's fine, but there isn't enough father-son relationship, and there's a great strength that you have with that. And I really, that really grabbed me. The story was outstanding.
Yeah, I thought so.
The next movie was pretty lackluster when they bring in what's the name Doomsday. They brought him in way too soon. But
Yeah.
Cavill didn't do anything wrong with that. His acting was excellent. Everything else stunk in the movie, other than Cavill's performance. So, but again, they had a Superman, and it's a very difficult role to fill. The only reason I can think that they're firing him is he's an older actor, and like when you're in any job for the longest time, you start getting more money.
Right.
So they are in a cost-cutting mode. That could have been the motivation, because his agent is probably going to be asking fortune for if he's going to stay on for the next 5 to 10 years. So they just said, we're on a tight budget. We need to get rid of you. That may be the only reason that I can see, but they should have kept him. They should have kept him.
I agree. I agree, because I don't. How are you going to replace that guy? And how are you going to get fans to accept him? Like I think at this point that's going to be their biggest hurdle is getting the fans to accept whoever they bring in, because fans are going to be, everybody was so angry about this. How are you going to get fans to accept whoever you put in that place next? I mean, no matter how good they are, people are still going to have, they're still going to have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth going into it. And I think that's going to be hard to get fans to accept them.
It's like firing Robert Downey Jr. in the middle of the Avengers series. He was a fan favorite. So if you get rid of him and you replace him with some other guy, it's not the same. You have the perfect Superman. And again, I go back to what they said. They said they want to focus in on Superman as the main character from DC, which I completely agree with. Batman has been overly dominant in DC for too long. It should be Superman, and then Batman is a close second.
Yeah.
But if they are saying that Cavill's not the right guy for the role, then the direction they're going in, I'm not interested in. After the Black Adam movie, I'm done. I have no plans to see any DC movie. Not buying any DC comics. I'm just, I enjoyed the time with that he had, but for me, DC is done. DC is just, rest in peace. Let him go. I actually think also this could be a move of desperation, because again, they're broke. They can't even promote their own movies. They don't have the budget for it. So I think they're making desperate decisions. And I think these are the wrong decisions. And what does that mean? If they keep going down this direction, they will go bankrupt, and they will just close their doors and let someone else take them over.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out for sure. I think, and I saw Ryan say, easy recast and reboots always happen, and that's fair. But outside of Hugh Jackman, there's not been again outside of the MCU, but you look at titles that are movies that have been rebooted and stuff. You look at Spider-Man. We've had 3 different Spider-Man, but none of those were near as long term as characters like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and as Cavill as Superman. I mean, I'm trying to think when did he first take over as Superman? What year would it have
Well,
been?
I don't remember the year. I remember the movie was Man of Steel, whatever that was.
Let me look.
Yeah, I was looking up something else because there is um
2013.
you mentioned rebooting, and so
2013.
okay,
So that's 10 years. Um 10 years that he's been that character that we have not seen another Superman. Um how many people out there that's the only person that they know as Superman. With Spider-Man, I mean, crap. Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland, which I absolutely hate Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think I can't stand that dude anyway. But I hate all the new Spider-Man movies. I think they're all garbage myself. But that's
I
another
agree, I
topic.
agree, I agree.
I
Because
hate everything
Spider-Man,
that they've done with it.
Peter Parker was a nerdy kid who was afraid to talk to girls. He loved science. He was a nerd like all of us, and he was broke. Again,
Yeah,
that was the human element and the down to earth element that Stanley put into all of his characters. That's why we fell in love with him and everybody else. Now these new incarnations are not broke. They're not afraid. They have girlfriends, left and right. That's not the original storyline, and I don't
yeah.
care for these two.
Well,
But
and there's not
Maguire
even a
was
Mary Jane. I mean, her name's
right,
MJ, but her name's not Mary Jane. She's never been called Mary Jane. There's no
right.
Mary Jane anything about her. Like, I don't know. I haven't liked any of them, but I didn't like the Andrew. I didn't. I won't say I didn't like the Andrew Garfield stuff when it initially came out. I just don't think I really paid much attention to it. But after going back and watching that, I liked Andrew Garfield as Spider Man. I think in the suit Andrew Garfield was really good, but I mean, you look at how quickly, how many times Spider-Man's been rebooted, and we haven't had that same actor playing that. Like, that's the only actor that we know as that character. I mean, I've never seen another Superman movie that didn't have Henry Cavill in it. But they that is the Superman that I know. But you look at Batman. How many Batman have we had in the last 15 years? I mean, we've had 3 now, 4? How many?
We have,
Uh,
but you mentioned rebooting, and I was going to use this as an example. It's not impossible to reboot something if you do it right. Remember when the Batman phase in 1989 with Keaton, Michael
yeah,
Keaton. Now, I thought he was an extremely poor choice for the Dark Knight. He's a comedic actor, a fine
yeah,
comedic actor, but not the Dark Knight. No, he couldn't be a Batman, and I never did accept him as Batman, and it was a
yeah.
terrible Bruce Wayne.
Everybody says that he's their favorite Batman, and I'm like,
I,
I grew up watching. I've seen Keaton, I've seen Val Kilmer, I've seen Clooney, I've seen what's his name, Gore the God Butcher. Uh,
oh, not Christopher Nolan.
I can't think of his
Bale,
name.
Christian
Christian
Bale.
Bale,
Right.
Ben Affleck, and the guy we have now. Like, I mean, I've seen 5 or 6 different Batman in my lifetime, but Michael Keaton, I never liked Val Kilmer too much or George Clooney. But Christian Bale, I thought was just phenomenal. But I never really cared for the Keaton and Kilmer and Clooney Batman as the actors as Batman. I mean, it just,
Well,
especially now being into comics, it definitely doesn't seem like it fits too much.
let's look at those roles because I remember how popular it was. I mean, it was wildly popular with bringing back Batman after so many years. After the last one was Adam West back in the '60s, and it made a tremendous amount of money. There was a second movie with what's his name, Danny DeVito. And
Yeah,
then Kilmer was a better Batman and a better Bruce Wayne. That he was more of a serious actor. Sad
yeah,
what happened to this poor man. His health went downhill, but
yeah,
that was an exceptional movie. And Clooney, Clooney took it like it was sort of not a joke, but he wasn't taking that role seriously.
yeah.
Clooney's a far better actor. He could have pulled off a better Batman and Bruce Wayne role
I
had
think so.
he put that effort into it. But by then it came too campy and too kidsy, and Schwarzenegger also didn't take it seriously. And so, but that series ran for a while, and then when they bring up Batman Begins, it was only a few years later when that whole series ended. I thought, why are they rebooting so quickly? And I almost didn't see it, but when I went to go see that movie, that movie also had that same kind of, he was a far better, Christian Bale was a far better Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Hmm.
I love the movie. Again, another storyline where a father's love for his son played a huge role in him, giving him some inner strength and so forth. That was a great script. And then, of course, the next one was, what made that role was Heath
Heath Ledger.
Ledger. Heath Ledger, sadly, he took his own life, which is just a tragedy all by itself, because what a loss that was. And
Yeah.
then the third one was a little lackluster, but that was at least believable, and they could
Yeah.
have built on that, and they simply didn't. So they're sort of zigzagging, if you will, down the road of the movies. And now that you've seen how to put a movie together, thanks to Kevin Feige and company, I equate them to what Stanley and Kirby did in the 60s. They
Yeah.
showed the way regarding success, how you do it, how you build this up slowly, piece by piece. And again, they had it with the Black Adam movie. And I thought, finally, they're on their way. And now it's all gone to the wayside.
Yep. I mean, just in a matter of what, a couple of months,
Yeah.
if even that. So yeah, I don't know. I know there are some there's a few Silver Age and Bronze Age DC books I'd like to get. There's definitely some Golden Age DC books I'd like to get, but again, I've just been kind of like, let me just see what happens. Maybe they'll go down a little bit more, But yeah, that's the great thing. If you're a fan of any of the Silver Age DC stuff, is you can get high grade stuff really cheap, especially uh, in comparison to Marvel stuff. And then you start diving into the census and looking at how low the census numbers are on some of these books
Yeah.
too, and it's like, wow, for that price, that's pretty good. But I'm still waiting just to see where it goes. But yeah, I definitely I don't see DC movies having the impact on their comics that Marvel has had in the past on their comics, for sure. I think at this point it's gonna have to be, they're gonna have to spark a new generation that hasn't seen all of the stuff that we've witnessed over the past decade with them.
I don't think they've sparked any interest in the comics. DC's movies have been so, zigzag and sideways. There's nothing really, other than, again, Black Adam, I think, sparked some interest in that particular character in the comics. But
It was kind of short lived, though. I mean,
yeah, I mean, but again, but with, if you're talking about the new comics with DC, they've gone into more of a they've gone more of a left wing culture, and if that's what you want to write, that's fine. I have no problem. You can write whatever you want to write, but what it comes down to is sales. Are the stories
mhm.
good? Do people want to buy this? Do they want to follow this, or you want to go down a more of a political, direction? That's their business, and I think they're suffering as a result. Regarding their silver, bronze, and copper age, I mean, there's still some silver age stuff I'd love to get my hands on
Mhm.
from DC, like what was it? Not Spotlight 4, First Flash. Drawing a blank all of a sudden. The first Red Flash from
Oh, okay, okay,
1956,
yeah,
yeah, and first Justice League, and some of those
okay.
others are very, very cool. Showcase 4, yeah. Oh God, I can't afford one. That's a really pricey. But
Yeah.
as a child, I loved the Red Flash. I still do to this day, and I guess maybe that's why I have a soft spot for Ezra Miller. I know he's got a ton of emotional problems, but I liked him as the Flash, and he's up in the air. But I'd love to get a lot of Silver Age stuff from that, and I was actually starting to put my toe in the water to see, read DC Copper Age, because it's inexpensive. They're almost, a lot of these dollar bin books. They're
Yeah.
fun, but regarding collecting itself, look, if you're buying to speculate, if you're buying to flip, if you're buying because you're a dealer, nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. I buy because
Mhm.
I love comics and I love the stories. So, and I have a huge luxury over you guys because I don't care about so much the cost. I mean, yeah, it's great to have a book that's worth a lot of money, but I love having these things in my collection because it's like having an old story that you see over and over again. You either reread it or you watch the TV show again, or the movie. Because I constantly go back and I've read some of these comics dozens, if not hundreds of times. Like this is my favorite series of all time. I've got it for this other show I'm supposed to be on, the Defender series. I
Yeah.
can't
Yep.
tell you how many times I've got them right here. I can't tell you how many times I've read this book, Defenders 1 and Defenders 3. They're colorful, fun books. Um, the first Valkyrie. They're still not all
Hmm.
that expensive. Look how colorful and fun that's Defenders 9. This is the Avengers Defenders War.
Hmm.
Sal Buscema art, Steve Englehart storyline. And this is my personal sentimental favorite. If I was stuck on an island somewhere, there's the only comic I'd have. It would be this one right here, Defenders 11. It has basically most of the characters in Marvel at the time, minus Spider-Man. But again, these are just fun reads, and I keep revisiting them. So anyway, I just collect because it's fun and I love doing it. So I don't want to say I'm indifferent about the money. I'm not indifferent when I have to pay for it. You know,
Right.
when you pay for an expensive book, yeah, like damn, this cost me how many thousands to get this, but
Hmm.
I have it. You know,
Yeah.
so
No, I'm right there with you for sure. Right there with you for sure. Um, so kind of getting back into the effects between the MCU and the comics. Um, Looking back, and again, we talked about Phase 4. Just it's definitely something that's just not been up to par with the rest of the movies. And I think honestly, if you look at the books that were, the big spec books on everything that happened through Phase 4, that tells a tale. Russell said earlier, follow the money. Well, if you follow the money through the comic books, I can't. I don't know of any of those big spec books that held any kind of value after the movie or the show dropped. I mean, if there's any out there that I'm not thinking of, I mean, let me know. But especially this year, I mean, the Vengeance, the American Chavez, that you can get that for pennies on the dollar now. All of the Kamala Khan stuff is cheap. Anything that had to do with anything, any part of Thor: Love and Thunder is pretty much dollar bin books, damn near.
well,
Not
let
literally,
me
but I
pause you
mean,
here. Did you read America Chavez, and who else did you mention? More of a
the
modern
Kamala
character.
Khan.
Did you
eh,
read any of those stories? Are you up to? Because I'm not. I know who they are. I mean,
No, I didn't
I've
even
never
know
read
who
them.
the characters were until everybody started talking about the spec stuff going on with it. So
Well, they could again, not having read them, and again, I am not impressed on any level with new modern books, and those are modern characters.
yeah.
That could have a huge reason as to why the books never spiked in value.
Well, originally they did. And that was the point I was making. Originally they were going super expensive, um, and then after the movies or the shows, they just plummeted. So again, that kind of went back to like my question earlier is like, you're paying all this money for this first appearance of America Chavez. Are you paying all this money for this book because you've read the stories and you think the character's great, the character's going to be a hit. It's going to be something that, people are going to fall in love with this character, and then they're going to want to follow the character in the movies back to the source material and get into the comic books, which is what brought me and Nick into comic books. Um, and you're going to have enough people that are going to want to dive into the source material of these characters that it's going to create a supply and demand issue, which a lot of times on these modern books, there's not going to be, um, and that you're going to make a profit on it down the road in a few years because people are paying extravagant amounts of money for some of these modern books like that Vengeance, and I mean the book dropped at least 50% within a couple of months of that movie coming out, and I don't know if it had to do with the fact that they wrote that character absolutely horribly in Doctor Strange. I mean, she was pretty much useless the entire movie. Um, they it seems like they've brought in multiple characters this year in movies and shows that it was just like, well, what was the point of them being there? Because you didn't really write them to have an impactful role in the story. Maybe they did something at the very end, and that was it, like with America. But you know, look at the Riri Williams books. Those all dropped except for maybe one or two. But those definitely dropped from what they were. They're not books that you see just getting bought up all every time they show up somewhere. And I know a lot of this probably has to do with some part with the fact that comic books as a whole have dropped in price. But a lot of this was happening even before we started seeing this. I don't know. I feel like that because of the way the MCU has performed over the last phase, it definitely seems to have made an impact on this the speculation and the sales in the comics for sure. And I wonder if now people are looking at that and they're getting a lot more hesitant because you don't see a big increase in prices leading up to the Ant-Man movie. And what's the other one we got coming up? We got Ant-Man and
Loki's coming up, which I'm really looking forward to season 2 of Loki because they'll follow up with King the
yeah,
Conqueror. What is the
Guardians.
Yes, Guardians?
Guardians, the
Okay,
other one.
right.
You don't see huge increases in prices or even volume as far as sales go for speculative books leading into these two movies going forward. And these are franchises of the Marvel MCU that have been a big part of it for a long time. But I haven't really seen it be that pattern we've seen in the past leading up to these movies. So I'm just curious: is it more of the impact of the economy, or is it more of the impact of the failed speculatory characters as far as comic sales have been going lately after the movies and series come out?
It's all of the above, but I think what I would add is these are again modern characters that don't have long staying power. And what are the
Yeah,
long storyline of Riri Williams to this point? What's the long storyline for America Chavez? They don't have it. Let's
yeah.
use an example here. When this guy first came out, I don't think people thought much of him. First Rhino. And
Hmm.
Rhino's a funny character. Some people, kind of make fun of. I love the character, and he grew, but he had a long, long storyline as the years and decades went forward. Because again, he became an extremely interesting character. I love this character, but again, time will tell. There may be, let's say, 10 years down the road, Riri Williams and America Chavez first appearances become more valuable because there's more storyline, there's more depth to the character. All these Silver and Bronze Age characters have a lot of depth because of all the multiple
Yeah,
stories they were in. And there's still a lot of Silver Age story characters, like the first appearance of Hercules still hasn't been tapped. That book is still way undervalued because if you go look through history, Hercules was all over the place in the Silver, Bronze, and Copper Age, a
hmm
main character, and you can still get that main character for not a lot of money.
yeah. He was
Uh,
in Avengers. He was in Thor. He was a part of the Champions. I mean, yeah, he all over the place.
and again, we'll see because his storyline is about to unfold in the MCU. We'll see how good the actor and the storyline, excuse me, how good or bad that is moving forward. But again, and how many books are there? If you look at the print count from these modern books, how many books are there from the America Chavez? How many books
Yeah,
are there from First? There's a bunch of them,
yeah.
and they're still in great shape because they're brand new comics. These books here, they're old. The paper quality isn't that great, and to find one
Hmm.
in high grade with white pages, that's pretty amazing. So again, it's also rarity. So it's all of the
Yeah,
above.
and that's something we've talked about before, in past conversations when it comes to the modern books now. It's to the point where you started getting into the 70s and especially the 80s. People started to notice like these comic books are collectible. They have a chance of being worth money later on down the road. They started bagging and boarding them. Well, that's going to help take care of the books, but it's you're still going to have a lot of issues and a lot of things that can happen to these books. It's not like today where you have people buying it off the rack, sending it to CGC and CBCS,
Right.
and it's being encapsulated and graded and pretty much guaranteeing the quality of that book going forward. And you you're gonna have you have so many of them that there's that's why, and you and I talked about it. That's why I don't ever see modern stuff reaching the pinnacle and peak that we see in golden age and silver age books, because there's just so many of them that are going to be out there. I mean, look at Ultimate Fallout 4. I mean, Jesus Christ, at the amount of books that are out there, and even in 9.8, it's crazy.
And well, the CGC census has what is it, 30,000 books that have been graded. You
Yeah,
know,
something
versus
like
I
that.
mean,
I'm
and this
sure.
this is this is an obscure. I've got a couple of obscure books here or there. This is Doctor Strange number 174. It's 8.5 white pages from 1968. It's an absolutely gorgeous book, front and back, but
Hmm.
it survived over 50 years in this condition here. Now, you can't say that with these other books. Here's another one, my personal favorite, The Cobalt Man, Roy Thomas creation, 7.0, white pages. I was always
Hmm.
buying white pages for the Silver Age. Why? Because they're gorgeous. The paper quality is still holding up. These new comics, the I don't know what they're doing, but the paper quality is far better than they did back in the Silver Age. Because again, Marvel was on a budget. They cut costs wherever they could with ink and with paper quality and so forth. So if you find an older book like that that's in that same condition, of course, it's going to be more rare. And again, that's one of many reasons why I'm so turned off collectively with the new comic market. I put my toe in the water last year to see what was going on. I wasn't impressed with storyline. I wasn't impressed with any aspect of it. I think they over
Yeah.
focused on the art. It's sort of like Hollywood is over focused on special effects, not the content of the story or the quality of the actor or actress.
Yeah, I agree. And we've talked about that before. You know, Nick and I, we were reading a lot of modern stuff early on when we first got into this, and it just got to a point where early last year, I just got to the point where I was picking my pull list up because I didn't want to stick my shop owner with books that I had, ordered, but there was literally nothing on shelves that had me even remotely interested in the storylines that were going on at that point anymore. And honestly, I have not heard anyone talk about a single thing in the past almost 2 years that has been strongly enough talked about that it made me interested enough to want to even go just walk up to the shelf and open the book. I mean, there's been nothing, and
There
that's
was
fine.
one. There
It
was
doesn't
one.
bother me.
Surprisingly, there was one. The Last Ronin got me. That the first book really because I could personally
Book
relate to it.
1,
Book one, yeah,
book
that was
1,
quite
yes.
good. I haven't read the others yet, but that one was the
You're
only one that was. I know you've said this
do
before. It's like
yourself
not
a
that good.
favor and just pretend that book 1 was the only one ever written. It was an absolute masterpiece. I wish I had
Yeah.
never read past that because it was absolute garbage, but yeah, I mean, I guess I was lying because that one right there, I was all in for The Last Ronin, and I was in for the story. I wasn't one of the people that was all excited about, "Oh my god, there's 500 variants and I want them all," and which one's the lowest print count. No, I didn't give a shit about any of that.
Right. Right.
I was excited to get some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that had been where the ideas and the whole idea of it was brought about during the Mirage era, Volume 1. This is like that gritty Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, Mirage Studios type storyline, because IDW has absolutely trashed the Ninja Turtles. Um, I've got volume 1 of IDW's Turtles, and I thought it was pretty good. I started getting into Turtles around issue 85, 90, somewhere around in there. And it has absolutely just been a travesty what they've done with that franchise. And I won't touch it going forward until it goes to another publisher. But I was excited to see something that where the idea came from, that original grittiness of the Turtles, and we got that in issue number 1, and I was really excited about it. But I immediately saw after issue 2 where this storyline was headed, where it was going, and what the focal point was being made, and I was just like, this is absolutely garbage. It was a whole switch and bait thing, and I think it really was just sad that not only that, but it took them 2 years to get all of it out, and I'm like, "This is the best you guys could come up with?" I mean, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, man, what a
Y-
disappointment.
Yeah, delay after delay. But you know what? I will share a personal note with you and your audience. Why that got to me was because I'm a martial arts instructor, and my instructor, Mr. Patrick Hoffman, and he passed last year, sudden heart attack, and it was very sad. In fact, I was on another show when I got word that he passed. His studio obviously closed down, and everyone's gone. I'm literally the last instructor from his studio, and I sort of, it's my personal mission to carry on his legacy because he had a legacy.
Yeah.
And when you face someone that face a situation where you're close to somebody, that person's no longer there. When that storyline unfolded, and he has to, he's no longer with his brothers who he lived, loved, they fought together, lived together, and now he's the last one. I kind of felt a personal connection to that because that's what, in fact, I taught this morning. We were talking about Mr. Hoffman. He's on. We're looking at his old YouTube videos, and it's tough when someone's gone and someone of that caliber. And again, with martial arts, there's a lot of fighting and sparring and all that sort of thing. So that was just a personal note, but that's why that one really got to me. And
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
now I'm disappointed that you said don't bother to read the following issues because I want to see what happens.
Go absolutely go ahead and read it, but I just know, and you may feel differently, because you're probably not as big of a fan of that franchise as I am. That was something I grew up with as a kid. It's been a part of my childhood. It's been a part of my whole life. So
Okay, now I get it. I thought it was just a bad content, but yeah, it was. You were disappointed, very much like I grew up being a Star Trek fan,
mm,
and there's no Star Trek. There really
mm.
isn't, and the people that are there weren't associated with Gene Roddenberry. J.J. Abrams, I keep knocking on him because he sucks so badly putting these movies together. He has no business involved with the franchise. And again, I had a deep love. I had such a deep love for Star Trek. It rivals my deep love for Marvel. And
Yeah,
now I don't have that anymore. So I go back to watch the old shows because that's all that's worth watching. Just like the comics, I go back to read the old comics. Those are the only ones worth reading.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I was gonna make another point. Oh, another point I was gonna make when it comes to these new characters that they're bringing into the movies, that are more modern characters, and this is something I don't know if people really look at and take into account, but I always have. When you go and you look at characters like Kamala Khan, America Chavez, Riri Williams, um, and I only bring them up because they've been the most to me the most even Jane Foster, the most specked on new characters um, over the last year anyway. But you look at those characters and Marvel doesn't have enough faith in these characters to even have them in comic books currently.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that. I didn't know
so
that.
what makes you think that they're going to have some big huge role going forward in the MCU anytime soon? Same thing with the Young Avengers. To my knowledge, they don't have a comic book series going on. They may. I'm not sure. Like I said, I haven't paid attention to anything that's hit shelves in at least a year. But um, when's the last time we had comic book series based on these characters? And if Marvel's not even putting out comic book content on them, then think about what you're spending $1,800 and $2,000 on. I mean, I can't imagine how the people who spent almost $8,000 on the Iron Man #9 variant last year or the year before, and now you can get that book in 9.8, the same book for under $2,000 all day long. Uh,
Well, there's also people that have far more means than you and I. And so
yeah, I
that has
guess.
to be factored in. So
Yeah,
9 grand, 10 grand is like you and I throwing $10 at a comic.
yeah,
So there is that component to it. But again, I wanted to, since I got back into comics, it's been over 25 years since I bought new comics, and I did a serious attempt to put a serious effort to see what was going on. And I don't, I'm not, it was way more expensive than when I was a kid. When I first started, comics were 25 cents, now they're $4, and they're not worth it. And the story doesn't grab me.
a lot of
I wanted
DC
to,
stuff is $5 and $6.
Oh yeah, and it's not worth it. But again, you look at the writers that are putting these together. They're young people who they're not that talented. Think about entertainment collectively. If you're an actor, actress, if you're a musician, whatever, not everyone's talented.
Yeah.
Talent is sort of it's a God-given gift. I mean, I have certain talents, and there's certain things I shouldn't even touch. Some of these people shouldn't be writing, and that was kind of true. Also, even with Marvel, there was a few writers. Steve Gerber comes to mind. Steve Gerber was not a bad writer per se, but he had a different style, and he destroyed my favorite team, the Defenders, because he had no idea what to do with them. So, and that's probably what's going on at Marvel. They just have these kids they think they can write, but it all comes down to the sales. Are you going to grab someone's attention? If you're an entertainer, just like this show here, we want to entertain your audience. Are they learning something? Are they interested in our conversation? Can they add to it? But
Yeah.
that's called entertainment. You want to keep everyone involved. With the new comics today, they didn't keep me involved from day one. I mean, there wasn't one comic other than the last Ronin one that I thought, wow, I want to see what's going on with the next episode. With one exception, I think there was one Spider-Man Crossroads, but that connected to a Copper Age book that I liked in that era
Mm.
with the Hulk. So that it was a little shoot off from that, which is totally fine. And Defenders one, there was a new Defenders series last year. The fascinating thing about that was the premise was in every single, with our universe, let's say it's 20 billion years old, but before that there was a previous universe, and previous universe there's always a Galactus in each universe. I'd never thought of. To me, that's an interesting concept,
Hmm.
but they didn't really expand on that, and I thought, if you're not expanding on it, I'm not buying any more books.
Yeah.
So again, they did not retain my attention. And why waste your money? I've got so many books to read. I've got years and years and years of entertainment, and those are just the ones I have in my possession. There's lots of ones to buy. For me, at my age, I think it's better spending of my time to get into quality issues that we know are good. We
Yeah.
know there's a better
Yeah.
storyline. So why waste your time and money? I'm going to stay with what I'm happy with.
Yeah. And that's where I'm at. Um, I've been reading the Fantastic Four, and I just I decided to get back into reading Walking Dead again. I started reading it when they started doing the color reprints, and then uh, I quit buying. I pretty much canceled my pull list because I just wasn't reading it all. And then I picked up the Walking Dead omnibus. I picked up 1, 2, 3, and 4 for the price of one of them earlier this year, and I decided a couple weeks ago to jump back into it. And that's something that when you look at it, I mean, it's all black and white art, but the story and the writing is good enough that you literally don't even notice it as you're reading it. That this is just black and white. Just it's not I don't want to say simplistic art, but it's a much more simplistic art than what you would see in stuff today. But the writing is so good, and it captures you and brings you in so much that it doesn't even phase you. You don't notice it at all. And I was thinking that I might have a little hard time reading with the black and white after starting in color, but I mean it's been no different, no issue, because the reading is that good. And I can't I would find it hard to believe that there's anything that's been written in the last 2 years that would capture me in that same way.
What grabs your attention and my attention in comics is, if you read the storyline or look at the artwork, does it inspire your imagination? That's what you look for, bottom line, when you look at anything. For me, that's what I'm looking for. Does let's say you become Spider-Man, and how that would be. That, and what I liked about that, I mentioned that because they changed over the Ghost Rider from Johnny Blaze to God, who was the guy that did it in the '90s? That was interesting to me. Another person takes over that power. How does that affect his life?
Oh,
And
Danny
and, and
Ketch.
Danny, yeah, those are quite good, and those are very inexpensive reads. But
Yeah.
again, that's what I'm looking for. Does it inspire my imagination? Does it inspire thought? And that's what grabs me, whether it's a written story or, again, a written story with some illustration to it. And again, that's what grabbed us as children, back in the '60s and '70s, and we're still at it. They lost me in the '90s when they were oversaturating this market big time. They went with too much of a good thing, and they threw out a
Yeah.
bunch of quantity, not quality. And I remember when it almost collapsed because no one was buying the comics. They were becoming more expensive. They weren't that good. I don't know about you, but I kind of see a repeat of history with there's still way too many new comics out there. They're way expensive. They're not that good. And now with the economy maybe taking a major downturn next year, I think the new comic market is going to be hurting in a big, big way. And you may see people closing their doors.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you have so many people that and I was been a I've done it myself. I can't think of the damn word, but you have so many people that are just going and buying all this stuff and spending all this crazy money on it and don't have a clue what's inside.
Right.
And it's not just a few people; it's tons of people that are buying into this stuff, and you can't make in my mind, you can't make an educated decision on whether or not you think this is going to be something that's worth putting the money into long term if you don't even know what's inside. If how can you make a good educated guess on that? Because that's all it is a guess. If you don't even understand or know what's inside of those books that you're buying, if you're just buying it because it's on a hot 10 list or because the last time this artist did a cover like this, it jumped up and went nuts. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to catch that lighting in the bottle on the second one like happened on the first one anyway. But that was one of the reasons too, where I was sitting here and I'm like, I'm spending all this money on these books. I don't even know what's inside. If I like the character, if I like the storyline, and that really sparked me to just dive in hard into Silver Age and into these books that I was buying and spending all this money on. And I just if you're buying for investment purposes, hoping that these characters are going to end up in the MCU, it would probably be good to read the material inside and see, like, well, this is how the character was written. Based on that, do I think that there's any legs here? And obviously they can rewrite the character to do whatever they want in the movies and stuff, and that's fine, understandable. But it would at least give you a good basis to know whether or not the character is actually something that could work on screen or in the direction that they're going, I think.
Well, there are two episodes in history, one long before both our times, and that was the Depression, when the stock market crashed to almost nothing, and people were just posting their worthless stock papers because they were worthless. They weren't worth the paper they were printed on because the companies went under. But we saw this recently in the '90s with the dot-com bust. Every dot-com company all you had to say, I'm something.com, and you could get people to give you millions of dollars to invest in you. The problem is people didn't take the time to see what kind of these companies were, what were they doing, what were they creating, and so forth. And when it, like any bubble, it burst, people lost millions. And so it's no different with the comics here. People are putting a lot of money into this, but in the end, are they going to be worth anything? They may be worth holding the bag and holding books that you wouldn't even see in a dollar bin. So,
Hmm.
but you know what? That people are people. They're going to make their own decisions. You buy what you like. If you love those comics, great. There's some dollar bin books here I love because I love the story. I didn't buy
Hmm.
it because I'm going to make money at it, and I don't care. I'm still very, very old school, and that's what I love about you and your brother. You're kind of you're again 25, 30 years younger than I am, but you guys have an old soul, if you will. You appreciate good quality. You appreciate good down to earth values, and I think that really helps you as people, but I also think it helps you appreciate good story and good content. Like I said,
Yeah.
the music industry, you mentioned the top 10. If my life depended on it, I couldn't name one artist, one song from the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years because I listen, I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I wouldn't pay for this. If it was given to me, I wouldn't listen to it.
Yeah.
So it's not grabbing my attention. Same with music. What grabs your with music is a good song, if you like the words, if you can understand the words, a good rhythm, a good beat, a good sound, and the combination of the two or three. That usually is a winning combination. It
Used
wants
to
you to
used to we would get some kind of a story even
yes,
or a
right.
message or something, painted a picture in a song, and I would probably guess that's not something that's a part of music anymore at this point.
I have no idea I have no idea what passes for music these days.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
I don't
remember.
I don't even I can't tell you they could literally pull the radio out of my truck and just put an auxiliary port in there, and
Yeah.
it would not bother me. I can't tell you. I probably haven't turned a radio on and listened to something on the radio in at least 10 years, at least.
Yeah, I mean, what's on? I don't terrestrial radio. I don't know why they're still in business. And then XM radio and all those others are getting way too expensive. So I'm
Yeah,
not paying money for all that.
yeah. Same here, same here. But I mean, that's pretty much how I started. I think I got into the spec stuff for. I mean, literally, maybe about 6 months, and it did not take me long to figure out like, wow, this is really just like a terrible, terrible loss. If you don't have a large amount of money to throw it in a bunch of baskets and hope that one of them hits to cover your losses on everything else. I'm like, this is just dumb. I'm like, I'm not a gambler. I don't like it. Like I see people do the raffles for books all the time. I'm not even going to give $10 for a spot to get a chance at winning a $10,000 book because I don't even want to gamble with that $10. I'm like, the
Right,
chances of
right,
me winning are so low. It's like I could take that $10 and buy something that I know I'm gonna want. Same thing with mystery boxes. I'm not spending a bunch of damn money on a mystery box, and I don't even know what's inside of it. I don't get excited off of the adrenaline and stuff of what could be inside. That doesn't excite me like it does a lot of other people, which is totally fine. When I could take that $100 and go buy $100 book that I know I'm gonna like, and ever since then, I was just like, you know what? I'm like, no, there's so much stuff out here that I know I want. There's no reason for me to be wasting money on all this stuff that I could care less about. And some of it has ended up turning out just by chance. Stuff that people laughed at me because I would buy and show off here on the channel, like all my Mortal Kombat books. And then over the past couple of years, what's happened to those? They've gotten pretty pricey. Several of them have gotten extremely pricey. I've got books I paid $20 for over here on my wall
right.
that are worth almost $2,000 now. Some of them even more,
Yeah,
and I still wouldn't sell them to you. I mean, I won't. Some of my, I can't tell you how long I was, the butt of jokes over me being so heavily into Power Rangers comics because that was my initial love when I got into comics, and a lot of those have gotten really pricey. So sometimes just by happenstance, yeah, some of the stuff that you love that you're buying ends up being worth money later on down the road, but you don't care. It's like, okay, well, I look at it as, well, damn, I'm glad I already have that one because now it's really expensive. But that's about as far as I go with it at this point.
but it brings the stuff you've kept, like the Mortal Kombat and the Power Rangers. That's a great childhood memory. I have lots of childhood memories.
Yeah.
I watched a show that most people haven't heard of today called Lost in Space. It was campy, no comparison to Star Trek, but it was fun for me, and there was lots of. It brought me some value and some entertainment. And this is why entertainment, even in the worst of times, still makes money because this is something we absolutely need as people. You need times when you need to be happy. If you work a lot, you've got a lot of stress on, supporting your family, that sort of thing. That is a tremendous amount of effort on your physical body and your emotional body. You need something to make you happy. And so this makes me happy to do this. That's why I've gotten involved. In fact, I think I've showed you this. This is the very first comic I ever bought back in
Yeah.
1977.
It's
I
a
loved it
badass
so
cover.
much, and I didn't know how good this was, and I fell in love with the story, fell in love with the art, everything about it, and then I bought the next one and the next one. Before you know it, there's this pile, and this is before Mylar and everything else is falling over because I have too many comics. But it brought me entertainment.
Yeah.
So you buy what you like. I mean, and again, back at one point I wanted to make too with I mentioned XM satellite radio. The only reason I like that because I love baseball, and when you get that, you get to listen to all baseball games, and all the announcers.
Hmm.
And the announcers today are just like the entertainers in music and television and movies. They're not that good. They're not that good at all. I mean, these guys suck. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember the old. We had Lon Simmons in the Bay Area, and we had Hank Greenwald, one of my favorites, and Harry Carey from the Cubs.
Yep.
But those people could relay a story, relay what was going on. These new guys are no different than the lackluster entertainment. They're
And that's the
awful at it.
thing. I think that's the thing that carried guys like that. I think that's what was able to make them so popular was because they could portray it as telling a story.
Yes,
They are
yes.
animating a story for you, and they understand how to approach calling a game for someone who's literally just listening driving down the road, so that you can see in your mind what's going on.
Well, if you go to YouTube, I mean, Stanley's been interviewed for decades. I love listening to any interview. He was such a great storyteller by just verbally describing anything, and
Mhm.
you were not mesmerized, but your attention was grabbed
Yeah.
because you knew how to relay a story. And that's a talent all by itself.
Yeah.
By the way, just as an aside, you're old enough to remember the Chicago Cubs being the laughing stock of baseball. They could never win a
Mhm.
World Series. I grew up as a Cubs fan, even as a boy, and I rooted for years and years and decades. You know, as I got older, I'm thinking, God, even I'm getting cynical, thinking they're never going to win. When they finally won in 2016, it was a combination of the people in the front office who bought it was what was the name who bought the team, and they started with using a different approach, using methodical a building approach to that team, and they finally put the right combination together to win in 2016. And I mention that because that's what DC doesn't have. Marvel does. Marvel needed someone like a Kevin Feige and those sort of people who knew how to put a storyline together, a movie together. It had a great combination of music, entertainment, storyline,
Yeah.
action, special effects, and it's a nice combination. DC doesn't have it. I think the problem with DC is the corporate level. It's the suits. The problem with the Cubs for all those decades, it wasn't the players, it was the front office. They kept making the same stupid mistakes, buying the wrong people, using a wrong approach, and it never ever worked. And they wouldn't change until just before 2016. I think probably sadly, unless this is their last hope for Zaslav and Gunn to get this ship on track, I think they are going to have to just go ahead and either they get new management, have a new approach, or I think the whole thing's just going to go bankrupt. That'll
Yeah,
be
who
it.
knows, man.
Can you imagine that DC go? You see
Yeah.
the story tomorrow. DC goes bankrupt. Files for bank. Chapter 11.
And what happens with it going forward after that? Mm. Yeah,
I
that
don't
would be
know.
wild.
And I'm beginning to. I used to think, well, maybe Disney could buy it because Disney does have the deep pockets for it. Apple could buy it. Apple Computer has the deep pockets for it. That would be interesting. It need someone with money because you got to pick. I bet you they have a bunch of debts that yet they have to pay off. So someone's going to have to pay off that debt. Start from scratch. Get a talent. There are talented people out there. There are other Kevin Feige's out there.
Mhm.
I don't think they've been tapped into yet. But I think that's the direction and the solution to because again DC has so much to offer,
Yeah.
so much to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something else that kind of that when you were talking about the announcers for baseball and all of that, something immediately brought to my mind. I was a big wrestling fan as a kid growing up in the '90s and
Yeah.
stuff, and that was something that was so different then. And I haven't watched much in probably the last 10, 15 years, but it got more away from the storytelling in and out of the ring, uh, you know, and more into who can do the most flips and dives and crazy moves, and
Right.
got away from the larger than life characters. And you talk about an announcer that captivates you as an audience, and telling a story to the point where you don't even have to have it in front of your face. The first person I think of is Jim Ross. And you know when you had names in the '90s like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and The
Right.
Undertaker and Triple H and some of these huge names, and then right there in the middle of it, I mean, Jim Ross was just as big a star in some cases as some of these guys as a ring announcer, but just because of his ability to
Right.
tell such a fantastic story through that headset. He's definitely as much a part of my childhood wrestling fandom as any of the other guys. I mean, I don't think that a lot of the moments that happened in wrestling at that time would have been as big had he not been calling those matches. And yeah, I don't see how. how it's going to go forward without somebody like him. Because I know the last time I kind of got into it for a few years, I was just like, man, I don't know who these guys are doing the announcing right now, but they suck, man. They
Well,
suck.
well, I
That-
grew up with Mean Gene Okerlund and Gorilla Monsoon, who's a
yeah,
great announcer
yeah,
and a classic. I mean, if you go back to the old '50s wrestling, he was a gorilla and a big man.
yeah,
But these guys were talented.
yeah.
And I grew up with, in fact, I used to go to the matches when they were in the Bay Area, the Cow Palace in San Francisco and the Oakland
Wow.
Coliseum. And they would announce the next match, and I'd run to the box office so I could be, we were front row, right at ringside in some of these matches. You see everything,
Yeah.
all the chicanery and all the fakeness and all that. But it was fun. Just like comics, it's all fake, but still
Oh yeah.
you're entertained.
Right.
But I remember they were great entertainers. Hogan was an entertainer. Macho
Yeah.
Man Savage was an entertainer. Ultimate Warrior.
Flair.
All these guys were
Yeah.
just, and when they were interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund, this was all improv. It's
Yeah.
kind of like what we do on the hunt. I mean, you're one of the best at this. I'm terrible at it. I have to rehearse to come up with something halfway decent. But these guys, off the top of their head, just had these great storylines, and they had this great persona. Again, that's talent. You
Yeah.
don't see that very often. You sure as hell don't see it today.
Yeah, and it all goes back to I mean, this the main focal point that we've been talking about, is just having good storytellers, and that's what it comes down to. No matter whether you're looking at music or movies and with acting, the performance is all about whether or not you can tell a good story, no matter what kind of story you're trying to tell. And if you're not up to par with your storytelling ability, then it's going to be hard to captivate people for sure.
Right, right. Listen, I'm going to have to end it because I have another appointment. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'd love to do this again because I'm going to grab a quick bite before I get on my next
Absolutely,
episode.
man. Where are you headed
Ladies,
so that everybody knows where to go watch?
so I want people to keep watching your show. I don't want to have
Oh,
people
I'm
follow
I'm
me.
rolling out too, man. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. I'm going to
yeah.
Spine Ticks. Got to go to see Sith Lordy, and that's a totally different gear. I got to shift gears when I do
Awesome,
this. But
awesome.
hey,
I
Dustin,
appreciate it, Dan.
I love being on here. Let's do this again. When Nick finally gets back, and hopefully we can get some rabbit ears or some Mickey ears from him. I hope he's having a good time. But
Yeah,
yeah, let's do this again. Lots to talk about.
absolutely, man. Take care, bud.
Thanks, bud. Take care, everyone.
All right, guys. Well, I hope everybody. I know it was kind of a shorter show than normal, but I got a busy day tomorrow myself, so I'm probably about to roll out and hit the sack myself. But I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's conversation. If you're watching the replay, definitely drop your thoughts and comments, and we will catch you guys. Maybe we'll be back next week. I don't know. Well, no, next Saturday is Christmas Eve, so we won't see you guys again probably till after New Year's for the Babylon. We do have a video going to drop this week. Had some CGC books come back for, I don't know, they were gone for like 14 months. So that video is going to drop this week. But other than that, just keep in touch with us on Instagram. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we will catch you guys in 2023, guys. So we'll see you guys then. Later.